If we are being honest, favors are often left at the reception. They just are. And it is so disheartening to see that money go to waste. So in this video, I'll be sharing tips on how to keep your wedding costs at a minimum and stay within your budget. Now, before I get started, I do want to introduce myself. If this is your first time on my channel, thank you for joining. My name is Khadija. I am the owner of Events by Khadija Planning and Consulting Company. I upload videos on wedding tips and tutorials about once a week. So if you like this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Follow me on my social media. And if you have any inquiries for my planning or consultation services, feel free to shoot me an email. I love to hear from you. Now, if you're feeling overwhelmed with all of the costs associated with the production that is a wedding, don't be. There are so many cost-saving alternatives out there that this video is probably only part one of so many more to follow. Today, I'm sharing just 10 of those cost-saving tips with you. Let's get into it. First of all, let me say this. If you are going to do favors, don't do something that's monogrammed with your name and your wedding date. That's so antiquated. People want something personalized for them. And if you're in a budget crunch, that's probably going to take you over your budget. So we're not even going to talk about that in this video. What I do recommend, and before I say that, I also want to say this. Understand that you are already providing for your guests great food, drinks, entertainment for the night. But if you absolutely want to send them home with something, then I recommend doing something edible. Something that is edible and cheap to produce in mass quantity. Something like homemade cookies. Who doesn't love a good homemade cookie? You can have them nicely wrapped, nicely boxed maybe, and send them home with that. And that way it's something that they're actually enjoying, something that they actually want, and that they're not gonna just put in the back of their drawer and have it collect dust. Who doesn't want to have their wedding on a Saturday in the month of May? It's perfect, right? It is. But if you think about it, any day is a perfect day to solidify your union with the person you love. So if you are willing and able to have your wedding on a weekday or on a Sunday, you will save money. And if you're willing and able to have your wedding in the off-peak season, which is generally from December to March, you will save money. And the reason why is because these are periods of time where the demand is not as high for venues and vendors. Their business really significantly slows down around this time, and they've got to keep business on the books. So you will typically get a reduced room rental, a reduced food and beverage minimum, and probably quite a few other incentives in there to book during these times. Now, I know that this is not going to be ideal for every couple. If you have a lot of people that are coming in from out of town, then middle of the week might not work for them. Of course, a lot of people have to work probably the day of the wedding and then the very next morning. So it may not work for them as well. Some people might be coming to the wedding right after work and get stuck in rush hour traffic and now they're late. So there are those things to consider. But on the flip side of it, you're going to get a lower guest count, more than likely. And, depending on if that works for you or not, that actually is cost saving in itself because you are now paying, spending less money on your per person cost in terms of the food, the beverage, the rentals, etc. Chance the Rapper has a song called Sun Come Down. And in the song, he says, I don't want nobody at my wedding that won't be there for my marriage. they can see it on Facebook. They can like it, they can share it, like, look at that dress and how'd she wear it. I felt that. Because the fact of the matter is, there are people in our lives that do not bring the good vibrations and that are critical in a negative way and that don't have the best intentions at heart and that are maybe coming to your wedding just to see how you did the decor. What dress did you wear? They're going to sit at their tables and speculate about how long your marriage is going to last. And you know who those people are. And sometimes we feel obligated to invite them anyway. But understand that this is the most special day, one of the most special days of your life. So you need to protect your energy up in that ballroom and at that ceremony site. So keep that in mind when making your invitations. And at the same token, understand that you literally have to pay for every single person that's going to be in attendance. So you want to make sure that they are people that are truly vested in the success of your marriage and aren't there just for that one day of festivities or to give any sort of negative energy. If you had an unlimited budget, you would probably invite the whole world to your wedding. I get it. But if you do have a limited budget, then you really want to consider cutting your guest list. The most important people that need to be in attendance on a day as personal as your wedding day are your closest family and closest friends. Everyone else, your neighbors, your work colleagues, the friend that you haven't even seen or spoken to in 10 plus years, not to discredit their importance in your life. But if it comes down to slimming down your guest list, they might need to not be invited. And in all honesty, they should understand the constraints of putting together a guest list. Of course, there are some rules of etiquette that you want to keep in mind. If you are inviting anyone that is married, engaged, in a long-term relationship, living with their partner, it's only right that you invite them as a unit, whether you know their partner or not. And another thing, I know that sometimes it's cultural to invite people that you may not even know solely based on the relationships they have with your parents, for example. I get it. I come from such a culture. And sometimes people invite themselves. They simply hear that there's a wedding that evening and they decide to show up. Also common in my culture. They might even bring a person or two or three with them. And so I understand that this might not be, doable for everybody. But if you are able to limit your guest list, and you're comfortable limiting your guest list, then it is a viable way to save cost. Having a miniature dessert display instead of wedding cake can save you some money. The mini desserts are just, generally speaking, less labor intensive and require less detail than a tiered wedding cake. Also, if you're going to have a wedding cake, depending on your venue and who is making your cake, you might have to factor in a cake cutting fee. This is a fee that venues will charge if the cake is being brought in from an outside bakery that is not on their preferred vendor list. And the cake cutting fee I've seen anywhere from $1.25 per person, all the way up to $3 per person. So that's another cost that can really add up. The cake cutting fee doesn't exist in the case of miniature desserts or even cupcakes where they're not doing the cutting and the serving. The other neat thing about a dessert table is that it can be assorted miniature desserts. So there's more variety for your guests, whereas with the wedding cake, you can really only have as many flavors as there are tiers. Now, if the ceremonial aspect of cutting the cake is important to you, you can get just a small cake for the bride and groom to cut, and then have the dessert display for the guests. You can just have the small cake for the bride and groom to cut and have a sheet cake in the back. Sheet cakes are going to be more economical as well. Another thing is that if you are having a coursed meal and one of your courses is a plated dessert, or if you're having a buffet and the buffet includes desserts, then you might opt to just have those desserts and completely forego the cake and the miniature dessert table. No need to add more desserts when it's already included in the dinner itself. If you do decide to serve wedding cake, a few things to keep in mind. First of all, everyone is not going to eat the cake for whatever reason. Maybe they are full from dinner, or they might not like the flavors. They might be on a diet, or they might just be busy on the dance floor and not worried about the cake. So for that reason, or those reasons, you really only want to account for about 80 to 85% of your guest count when ordering your cake. There's no need to get a cake that's going to feed your full guest count, because there will be leftover. The other thing is, depending on your timeline, if you are cutting your cake closer to the end of the night, as is traditionally done, then there's also a good chance that some guests have already left and gone home at that point. You can have the venue manager put a note on the banquet event order to have the servers cut the cake a little thinner than usual. And this is just because for the people that do have cake, I find so many plates don't finish the cake that they have on them. They might take a few bites and that's it. So have the slices cut a little smaller. Also, rather than just having the servers automatically drop a plate at each seat, you can have the servers ask the guests if they would like cake, because you might have guests that say, you know, I'm actually good. I don't want any cake. And again, another way for you to eliminate waste, because at the end of the night, I definitely always find so many untouched plates of cake sitting at empty place settings. From centerpieces to printed items like invitations, place cards, menu cards, table numbers, there are things that you can do or make on your own for your wedding to save money. And the thing to keep in mind for your DIY projects is to, number one, have a clear designation of who is responsible for making them, whether that's, you and a group of your girls on a Friday night, whether, your aunt is making your centerpieces and is responsible for the delivery of them. Make sure you know who is making them, who is actually getting them to the venue, who is setting them out at the venue. And if there's any last minute assembly required, then who is responsible for that? And oftentimes this will be your planner or your coordinator. But if it's not, and it's, a member of your family or one of your close friends that's doing it, then just make sure that it's established beforehand what the responsibilities are. The other thing with DIYs is you want to make a sample of all of your DIY items as early on as possible, so that you, number one, have an understanding of the time and the materials needed to create it. And number two, so that you can make sure that you love it. And once you're happy with the sample, then go ahead and make all the rest of them. Don't wait until the last minute. Don't wait until the night before. I don't even encourage waiting until the week before. Because depending on your culture, there might be so many, festivities leading up to the actual wedding. And really the week before should be a stress-free time for you. So get them done as soon as you can. In certain cases, as in centerpieces, if it's, going to contain real flowers, then those are things that really can't be made too far in advance. But try to get as much done as possible so that you aren't scrambling or stressing out on the day of your wedding. Printed goods are a nice detail, but you can go virtual with them. You can send your save the dates, your invitations, your thank you cards after the fact, all via email. You can have your guests RSVP online. And not only does this save paper, so it's environmentally friendly, it also saves you money on the printing cost, and it saves you money on stamps, which can really add up when you're sending these things to 100, 200, or more people. The other thing to consider is to consolidate the printing goods that you do have. So, for example, rather than having an individual menu card at each place setting, maybe you have a communal menu at each table that is beautifully framed and placed at the center of the table. If you're having 20 bridesmaids and 20 groomsmen, then more power to you. But if we're being serious about keeping your costs at bay, then you might want to consider reducing the number of people in your bridal party. First of all, it's customary to get a gift before the wedding for every single one of your bridesmaids, all of your groomsmen, your maid of honor, your best man. And within the last few years, it's also become pretty common to actually propose to your bridal party, which also includes gifts, whether it's a proposal box or, individual personalized, will you be my bridesmaid, will you be my groomsman gifts. And all of these really add up. It's so important to pay attention to the miscellaneous fees and charges that can be added, and include those in your budget. These include things like taxes, service charge, which at some hotels can be 23, 24, 25% of your food and beverage spend. It can include a bartender if that's applicable. If you have a cash bar, sometimes they charge a cashier fee. If you're having tray passed hors d'oeuvres, sometimes there's a butler fee for the server to pass them. So ask about all of these fees and charges up front, include them in your budget, and continue to keep up with them. Keep up with your estimate of charges as a whole. Most venues will provide you an itemized estimate of charges that includes all of these miscellaneous fees and is specifically based on your guest count and your selections. And then as you finalize your selections, as you add items and remove items, as your guest count increases and decreases, this estimate of charges is a working document that they will continue to update for you all the way up until your cutoff date. And if they don't proactively provide this to you, then definitely ask for it, because it's important to know where you stand at all times with your budget. If you are having florals at your wedding, they can get pricey, especially if the arrangements are really intricate, or they include flowers that are out of season. They can get expensive. So save some money by repurposing the flowers from your ceremony to your reception. And this is really common. So florists will typically be on standby, and they are ready to strike your ceremony as soon as it's cleared out. And they will then take these arrangements over to your reception and set them while your guests are enjoying cocktail hour. It's usually very seamless, and you get to maximize your flowers. I don't just say this because I am a planner and a coordinator. I say this because it's actually true. Hiring a wedding planner or coordinator can actually save you some money in the long run. And for the most peace of mind, I recommend hiring a full service planner. And the reason why is because budget management is included within our services typically. So we can help you establish your budget and also review it throughout the planning process as a working document so that we're making sure that we're always staying within the established parameters. We also have these connections. We have established relationships with vendors that allow us to get certain discounts that you alone may not be privy to. And I know that a full service planner can get pricey. So if that's not in your budget, then try to at least hire a coordinator. And a coordinator typically steps in 1 month prior to your wedding. Now, because of the time at which they're joining the planning team, they don't necessarily have too much of an influence on the budget, because at that point, you've pretty much already secured everything. And for that same reason, they don't necessarily have very much influence on the vendors you've hired, because at that point, you've pretty much already contracted your vendors. But what they can do is overlook everything. And what they will do is overlook everything. They'll review all of your orders. And due to their experience and their knowledge, they are able to take a look at an order and see what you maybe don't necessarily need to pull off the wedding. Or see where you've ordered this, but here's another alternative that is comparable, but, a little bit cheaper. So they can still provide you a level of expertise that you, as a non-event professional, may not know. All right, so those were just 10 wedding planning money-saving tips. And as I said earlier, there are so many more that I want to share with you. So stay tuned for follow-up videos on this channel. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on this video and also any questions that you have. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that I know to keep bringing you more content like this. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.